Hey there, and welcome to Smart Tutor. So glad you're here. If you're looking for simple, clear breakdowns of complex stuff, you are absolutely in the right place. Before we jump in, do me a quick favor and hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss out on what's next.
Today, we're going to take a journey deep inside our own bodies, into the bloodstream. We're talking about nutritional anemias, what happens when our bodies are missing the key ingredients, the building blocks they need to make healthy red blood cells.
So have you ever had that feeling, that deep down, bone-deep tired that just will not go away no matter how much you sleep? It's something so many of us feel, but the answer could actually be hiding in your blood. Let's find out how.
Okay, our story starts with one of the main characters, iron. It's way more than just a piece of metal. It's one of the fundamental building blocks of life. But our body's relationship with it is, well, it's complicated. And this brings us to this really cool concept called iron homeostasis. See, iron is a total double-edged sword. We desperately need it to live, but if you have too much, it's actually toxic. So our bodies have this incredibly smart system for keeping it in perfect balance. Not too little, not too much. It's a constant juggling act.
So where is all this iron hiding out? Well, the average adult has about 3 to 4 grams of it. And as you can see from this chart, the lion's share, we're talking about 2/3 of it, is locked up inside the hemoglobin in our red blood cells. And that's its most important job, carrying oxygen from our lungs to every single cell in our body.
But how does iron get from, say, your dinner plate to your bone marrow where it's needed? Well, say hello to a protein called transferrin. You can literally think of it as the body's dedicated iron taxi service. It picks up iron, shuttles it through the bloodstream, and drops it off exactly where it needs to go. It's a tiny amount of our total iron, but man, is it always busy.
Okay, so we've seen how important iron is, but what happens when this perfectly balanced system starts to fail? When we have a shortage of iron, it leads to the most common nutritional problem in the entire world, iron deficiency anemia.
So how does someone even become iron deficient? Well, there are pretty much 4 main roads that lead there. First, and the most obvious, is you're just not getting enough iron in your diet. Simple as that. Second, you could be losing blood, either from an obvious injury or something more hidden. Third, sometimes your body just can't absorb the iron you are eating, like in conditions such as celiac disease. And finally, sometimes your body just needs way more iron than usual, like during pregnancy.
Now, doctors can spot this with a blood test that shows a really specific pattern. Your ferritin, which is your iron storage, is low because, well, the storage tanks are empty. The iron floating around in your blood is low too, but, and this is the interesting part, your total iron binding capacity, or TIBC, is high. That's the body sending out a whole fleet of those empty iron taxis, the transferrin, desperately searching for any iron they can find. And the red blood cells themselves, they end up small and pale, or microcytic and hypochromic, because there just wasn't enough iron to build them properly.
Okay, let's totally switch gears for a second. We've talked about what happens when you're missing the raw materials. But what if the problem isn't the materials, but the factory itself? This brings us to a whole different class of problems, the megaloblastic anemias, caused by a lack of vitamin B12 and folate.
And here is the absolute heart of the problem. Without enough B12 and folate, our cells literally cannot make new DNA. And if a cell can't copy its DNA, it can't divide. This is a huge crisis for any cell that divides quickly, but it's a catastrophe in the bone marrow, where you're supposed to be churning out millions of new blood cells every single second. And this is what happens. Because those early cells in the bone marrow can't divide, they just keep growing bigger and bigger. So, when they're finally pushed out into the bloodstream, they're abnormally large and kind of oval-shaped. This is what we call macrocytic anemia, macro, of course, meaning large.
And it's not just the red blood cells. Take a close look at this picture. That's a type of white blood cell called a neutrophil, and its nucleus, it's broken up into way more pieces or lobes than normal. This is another one of those classic telltale signs for a doctor that the whole DNA-making process is in trouble.
So what causes such a severe B12 deficiency? Well, one of the most common reasons has nothing to do with what you eat. It's actually a case of friendly fire. It's a condition called pernicious anemia.
Pernicious anemia is what's known as an autoimmune disease. What that means is your own immune system gets confused and starts attacking healthy cells in your stomach lining. Now, those specific cells make something called intrinsic factor, and you absolutely need that factor to absorb vitamin B12 from food. So without it, you could be eating all the B12 in the world, and your body just can't bring it on board.
To see what this actually looks like for a person, let's look at a case.
A 67-year-old woman shows up with this slowly worsening tiredness, getting out of breath easily, and swollen ankles. At first, they even gave her iron, but it didn't do anything. It just goes to show how these symptoms can sneak up on you and look like a lot of other things.
And this is so important to understand. A B12 deficiency is way more than just being anemic. Just look at this diagram. It is a full-on crisis for the entire body. The effects on the nervous system are especially scary. In the brain, it can cause memory loss, even something they call megaloblastic madness. In the spinal cord, you can lose your sense of balance. It really hits every single system, which is why catching it is so critical.
All right, let's talk about the final piece of our puzzle, B12's partner in crime, folate, which you might also know as vitamin B9. When you're low on this, it causes a very similar kind of megaloblastic anemia.
You'll probably notice the reasons for folate deficiency look kind of familiar, right? A diet that's low in things like leafy greens or beans is a big one. And just like with iron, the need for folate goes through the roof during pregnancy. That's why prenatal vitamins are packed with it. And again, certain diseases and medications can block you from absorbing it properly.
And here's why the end result looks almost identical to a B12 deficiency. Folate is another essential gear in that same DNA-making machine. Without it, you have the exact same problem. Cells can't copy their genes, they can't divide, and you end up with those same large, unhealthy blood cells.
Okay, so let's put it all together side by side. It really boils down to this. On one side, you have iron deficiency anemia. The problem is a lack of raw materials, no iron to build hemoglobin. This gives you small, pale cells. On the other side, you have megaloblastic anemia. The problem there is a breakdown in the production line, impaired DNA synthesis. This gives you large, oval cells. Two totally different problems, both leading to anemia. And that leaves us with a pretty incredible thought to chew on, doesn't it? All of this complex science we've talked about, it all comes back to the food on your plate. So the next time you sit down for a meal, just think, the iron in that spinach, the folate in those lentils, that is literally about to become the building block of your next red blood cell. And that's a wrap for this explainer. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. We really hope this gave you a clearer picture of how nutrition fuels our bodies from the inside out. Make sure you're subscribed, and we'll see you in the next one.